Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is 10 days out from tabling her first federal budget and the first federal budget in 2 years. It is clear that funding for childcare will be a big item. Here is Freeland speaking last night at the Liberal Policy Convention with former Liberal Cabinet Minister Ken Dryden.
I really believe COVID has created a window of political opportunity and maybe an epiphany, as you put it, on the importance of early learning and childcare. I am finance minister, and I believe in it because it is a surefire way to drive jobs and economic growth.
The Liberal Party has long touted the need for a national childcare plan. So is it a part of a budget plan or an election platform plank? Mélanie Joly is the Minister of Economic Development and the co-chair of the National Liberal campaign, and she joins us from Montreal. Minister Joly, thank you very much for joining the program. The Prime Minister has repeatedly said his government is focused on the pandemic, not on an election, but here we are on the cusp of a big spend budget, then a confidence vote. The Liberal website looks like it's under renovation, perhaps for a campaign. I wonder, how is your party right now preparing for an election?
Well, the Prime Minister is right, obviously, because we know that the most important priority for Canadians and for the government is to fight the pandemic and deal with the impacts of the economic crisis. That being said, you mentioned it, budget is coming. It will be a confidence vote, and we are a minority government, and therefore we have to be ready. And that's why exactly we're holding this convention as part of our annual reality as a political party, at the same time as other parties are as well. And that's why also we're making sure that our Liberal volunteers and candidates are ready as well.
You know, those volunteers, those candidates, everybody ready, it seems. And yet here we are also with 4,227 new COVID-19 cases just in Ontario today, seeing new highs in places like Quebec and BC. Would it not now be irresponsible to do something that would trigger an election this spring?
David, we would never put Canadians' health at risk. That's our priority, is to make sure that the pandemic is really is being dealt with. We know that there's a third wave happening. We know that there's a lockdown right now in Ontario. We know that other measures have been announced in Quebec as well. So obviously, we want to make sure that we're dealing with Canadians' priorities.
So how do you do that? How do you do that if there is a spring election? How do you ensure that Canadians are safe?
Well, as I said, the most important thing is to make sure that not only we're fighting with the, against the pandemic, working with provinces, and we hope that the parties within the House will collaborate with the government on the upcoming budget. And meanwhile, we just need to make sure that we vaccinate Canadians, that we get these vaccines into Canadians' arms. And, there's light at the end of the tunnel because, vaccination is rolling out. And that is our main priority. As a minister also in charge of economic development, I would say, David, that we also need to make sure that Canadians have jobs, that our businesses are able to survive the pandemic. And that's why there's so many measures that we're putting into place to make sure that jobs are protected and also that we can create more jobs.
Many of those measures we expect to see in the budget coming up on April 19th. And last night, the Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, making no bones about Liberal plans for a national childcare initiative. But of course, this is something we've heard from your party since, 1993. Why should people believe it now?
Well, I think that Canadians know that the pandemic has hit hard many people, but in particularly women. And I come from a province where having a childcare system is helpful for women to be able to participate in the economy and have jobs. Now, we know that childcare has been an issue, has been also a stop for many women to be able to participate in our economy. And as this pandemic has been really affecting more women, because sometimes children were, at school, at home, on their computers, and therefore one of the parents had to stay home to help them out. And also because a lot of women were part of sectors of the economy that were more affected, maybe, hospitality, tourism, the service sector. We know that we need to be there for them. And that is a good way to make sure that in the end, we will have better workforce participation. This will grow our economy, and that will create more jobs. And that's how basically we'll be able to build back better.
Why did it take a pandemic to be behind the backs of Canadian women, as you describe it? Why not at some other point in the years in which you've been in power?
Well, we came up with the Canada Child Benefit, and that was really life-changing. We were able to get out many Canadians, particularly children, out of poverty, and I think that was a step in the right direction. But I think as we're moving forward, as we're making these investments, I think the time is right at this point.
Let me ask you, just whenever the election does happen, this spring, this fall, we'll see. You're one of 11 cabinet ministers from Quebec, and the caucus puts a lot of energy and focus into gaining support in Quebec from voters there. But what do you do as co-chair of the campaign to ensure the party is doing more to appeal to voters outside of Quebec, outside, say, of Ontario as well, and looking perhaps to places like Western Canada?
Well, I have the chance to be the minister in charge of economic development, like I was saying, in charge of 6 agencies, economic development agencies. We're creating a new one also for BC, so 7. And the idea is to make sure that people across the country are well represented and that we keep their trust, because we were able to earn them their trust in 2019. And we have to continue to be there for them. So maybe in Atlantic Canada, in Quebec, in Ontario, across the West and in BC and the North. We know that Canadians living in the prairies have been deeply impacted by a double whammy. The pandemic, the economic crisis, and the drop in oil prices. Again, 2 days ago, I was in a conversation with all the mayors of the prairies and BC, and they know how much our investments recently have helped them to deal with the fact that many jobs were lost, including the fact that we have the wage subsidy. We're there also with the orphan well strategy, and obviously with all the different small business loans we're offering.
Ralph Goodale, Minister Ralph Goodale was on the program just yesterday telling Vassy Kapelos that if he wanted one thing out of this campaign, it was for his party to appeal more to Western voters. And this is from a man you sat in cabinet with who lost his seat in Saskatchewan. What do you do to help people like him win those seats in places like Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta?
Well, I'm a big fan of Ralph Goodale. He used to be actually sitting, I used to be sitting next to him in the House of Commons. And he's a really good and strong advisor to this government. That being said, I think also that through the different measures we've presented during the pandemic, we've been able to show entrepreneurs and people in the West that we've been there for them. And that more than ever, the federal government is there as a force of good for Canadians in the prairies that sometimes can feel that the federal government is thousands of kilometers away from their own reality. At the same time, we know that we will be, after this pandemic, David, we will be facing a recession. We know that. The world will be. And therefore, we need to build back better. That's not only a slogan, that's actually a strategy and a plan. And we need to help the resource-based economy in the prairies to be able to do the transition, which will offer opportunities and work and good jobs to people across Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. And not only that, we need to make sure that the agriculture-based economy is able also to create opportunities to transform goods. So the great pulses that we export across the world, the canola, etc., that we can help that second transformation that would create hubs in our cities across the prairies that could create jobs. And that's why we want to make targeted investments that would benefit people in the West.
We've only got a few seconds left here. Mark Carney, former Governor of the Bank of Canada, Bank of England, speaking to the Liberal Convention tonight. Should we expect him to put a red T-shirt on while he's there?
Well, you tell me. You can ask him.
I would ask him, but I think you may know stuff that I don't know.
Well, what I can tell you is, as a Liberal, I'm happy that he's participating in our convention. And obviously, we need all the great advice we can to deal with the economic crisis we're dealing with. And the fact that he's a former governor of the Bank of Canada, of the Bank of England, makes it definitely, a good person to hear advice from. And for the rest, I'm happy that we have lots of great people participating in our convention. And for those of you listening and that want to participate in the next election, particularly if you're a woman, because that's a personal priority of mine, and you want to run for politics, please contact us, because we want to make sure that we hear your voice and we want to make sure that you run in the next election.
Minister Joly, thank you very much for your time. Have a great weekend.
It's a pleasure, David. Stay safe.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.